Welcome, everybody. Thank you very much for coming and welcome to our very first UNSW Funders Virtual Hackathon, Circular Economy Resource Hack 2020. We're so excited you could make it. You could be here with us tonight. My name is Nancy Torres and I'm the Entrepreneurship Officer at the MCIC, the UNS Founders team. A hackathon is a 2.5-day competition where participants are faced with a problem statement or a challenge that currently exists in the world. People come together and learn, brainstorm, test, talk, and create a prototype over the weekend that they will then present to a panel of judges on the last day. It is a big commitment and takes a unique person who is passionate to create change in the world. So congratulations on showing up and having a go. You are already ahead of the pack because getting started is one of the biggest challenges. This hackathon is very special because we are working on our city, the city of Sydney. And we believe that by changing local and thinking global, we can create tangible solutions to make the world a better place. So Circular Economy Resource Hack 2020 is brought to you by UNSW Funders and Art and Design. For global impact, we have integrated this hackathon with the ASU the ASU DevX Global Impact Hackathon, where universities will compete to find solutions for global challenges. We would like to start off tonight with the Acknowledgement of Country. We would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we all meet today. I would like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging. The problem statement, the challenge that we're working on during this weekend is how might we redesign, rethink, repair, and repurpose spaces, places, materials, and systems within cities in order to progress social, natural, and economic development. We encourage you to go social throughout this weekend. Go social with us and use our hashtags. So you can sort of take a photo with your phone to save these screenshots, and also all these screenshots are on the Slack channel, on the Slack group. You can also, of course, add your own hashtags to these ones. Tonight's agenda, we're going to go and talk about the hack instructions. We're going to welcome UNSW Funders, Art and Designs, and Plus Alliance. We're going to present our wonderful 3 speakers. And after that, we're going to go through Q&A. Then we will have a wonderful networking event and then wrap up. Prizes for this hackathon. Well, the James and Kirby Foundation has contributed a total of 1,500 in prizes. So the first place will have $1,000. The second place will have $250. And the third place, which will be People's Choice, will have $250. Event logistics and terms and conditions. Attendance, to be eligible for the prize, make sure you register every single day, all right? Talk to us via Zoom, as we mentioned before. Code of conduct. So we have a code of conduct that you can easily check on the MCIC Hack website. And please make yourself aware of what is expected of you during this hackathon. Filming and photos. We'll be taking photos, or in this case, screenshots. So to be used for marketing purposes. So if you would like to be in our marketing, please let us know so we will use your photo. About IP, who owns the IP? The IP is owned by you and your team, so it will be negotiated among yourselves. There are more details about this in the UNSW Code of Conduct. And please, if you haven't yet, join the Slack group, because there is like all our communications will be through, so it's very important for you to be there. To compete for the prizes, you must have a UNSW staff, student, or alumni as one of your team members. Also, throughout the 3 days, you're going to require to complete 4 checkpoints, and the links of those checkpoints are going to be on Slack. However, only checkpoints 1 and 4 are the only ones that are mandatory, okay, and must be submitted on time, especially because checkpoint 4, is related to your pitch deck, the final presentation. So it's very important to have it on time. The schedule for the weekend. For today, as we mentioned, we will have wonderful keynote speakers and a networking session after. For tomorrow, we will have a workshop related to ideation, creativity, and rapid research. After that, you will have a mentoring session. Each mentoring session has a duration of 30 minutes. So please try to have all your questions previous your mentoring session, so you'll make the best out of your mentoring session. Then you'll have the workshop in the afternoon related to prototyping, and then another mentoring session. Day 3, you'll have another workshop related to how to pitch your idea, and a mentoring session. And finally, the final pitches and the celebration. We would like to show you the video of UNSW Funders. For those who don't know much about it, it is a video that will show all our programs. So let's give it a go. There we go.
Have you ever thought you might want to change the world? UNSW is a world leader in creating innovative solutions to improve people's lives. We've produced more technology startups than any other Australian uni. What do these people have in common? An entrepreneurial spirit and the drive to create change. Our Founders Program can help build your skills to develop you and your startup. Here at the MCIC, you can hack, design, prototype, and tinker. You'll make new friends and become part of our community, with the opportunity to join in workshops and events. Got a business idea? We'll hook you up with a business coach who'll be with you every step of the way, helping you with anything from designing your first digital marketing campaign to planning for your first capital raise. They're also there to let you know what programs you might be ready for. We have a range of initiatives that you can get involved in, including New Wave Founders, for aspiring women founders who want to gain confidence, build entrepreneurial skills, establish valuable networks with other amazing women, and access expert industry mentors. Our pre-accelerators group you with startups at similar stages and are tailored for whatever stage you're at, starting out, launching a product or service, or growing your established startup. And then, if you're ready, you'll have the opportunity to participate in our flagship 10X Accelerator, including our industry-specific streams. Here we help you make valuable connections, provide mentorship from industry giants, gain access to funding, and 6 months co-working space with your peers. And what's best? This is all free.
Founders Program gave us a great opportunity to validate our idea from nothing, essentially, into a fully functioning business that's making revenue. So if someone's thinking about applying for the UNSW Founders Program, I think there's a no hesitation yes to that answer. And that's based off the support they provide and their ability to really align what your vision is and your idea is with the right program at the right time and support you throughout the whole process.
At Founders, we believe that supporting people on their entrepreneurial journey will lead to a better future for everyone. So if you want to change the world, come to us. We'll help you make change happen.
Wonderful. So as we can see, we have so many opportunities to continue the entrepreneurial project that you're going to have that you're going to create this weekend. And one of the best things is that these opportunities are free for UNSW students, staff, and alumni. So for today, tonight we're super happy with the collaboration we have between funders and art and design, and that collaboration made possible this hackathon. So I would like to introduce Carly Vickers from Art and Design. Carly, would you like to tell us a little bit about art and design? And I actually have Carly here very close to me, so really nice to be close.
Thanks. Sorry. Thanks so much, Nancy. Yes, Art and Design are really excited to partner with the Founders Program on this hackathon and with a number of other projects throughout the year. As Nancy said, my name's Carly. I'm an associate lecturer on the Art and Design campus, which is in Paddington. We're a school that has a number of degrees across the fine arts, design and digital media. And we're just really excited to have a great representation here tonight and to look at the problem we're solving regarding sustainable solutions and circular economy. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Thank you, Carly. And we also have with us we also have tonight Megan Tapia. Megan is representing the Plus Alliance. Megan, would you like to tell us a little bit more about Plus Alliance and also about the DevX World competition, please?
Thanks, Nancy. Sure. The Plus Alliance is a university partnership that UNSW has with King's College London and Arizona State University. It exists to solve global challenges and to address education and student experiences. A group of students from the 3 Plus partners initiated the global hackathon idea, which was then developed into fantastic events by the MCIC team here and with an incubator program at ASU. This year, our ASU colleagues have rallied another 15 universities to be challenged across 5 problem statements, including the one that you've been provided. And the winning UNSW solution will represent our university in the global challenge. Selected winners of the 5 problem statements will then have opportunities to present their solutions to the audience of DevX World Conference, which convenes leaders of institutions such as the World Bank and the Gates Foundation, as well as social impact organisations. You'll find more information on this if you check out the resources in Slack, and I wish you all another fantastic event.
Beautiful. Thank you very much, Megan. And the judging criteria for the hackathon, we will be checking how innovative is your solution, the impact that it will have in the world, the implementation that you, how feasible is your idea, and how you implement it, and how you pitch your idea overall. So for tonight, we have wonderful speakers, and I will hand over to Carly to introduce the speakers. Yeah.
Thank you, Nancy. Yes, so as Nancy said, we're really lucky tonight to have 3 keynote speakers who are experts on the topic that we're looking at. So thank you so much to those speakers. They are Pippa Corrie, Guy Kuhlmans and Carmel Rees. So I just want to introduce you to their backgrounds before we hand over to them. So Pippa founded Philo & Co. to help creative businesses and brands transition to a circular economy. Pippa holds a Bachelor of Sciences in Product Design and has more than 10 years experience within the creative industry, innovating how creative businesses and brands can redefine how we design. She brings a holistic view in solving the systematic challenges required to transition from linear to circular business and design practices. Pippa is a participant of APCO's 2020 Design Working Group, actively contributing to the development of strategies to deliver the 2025 National Packaging Targets. She has also been selected as part of the expedition Round the World Sailing Voyage in 2021 to research plastics and toxins in our oceans, with the ambition to define closed-loop solutions to plastic and packaging waste. So thank you again to Pippa for joining us. Our second speaker will be Guy Kuhlmans. Guy is a designer, artist and researcher, producing critical objects and processes informed by history, philosophy, sustainability theories and studio experimentation. Major themes in Guy's work are repair and reuse, generative processes, materials of design, and the environmental impacts of production and consumption. His current research is funded through an Australian Research Council linkage project and partners with the Australian Design Centre, Jam Factory and Design Tasmania. Guy has a Master's in Humanitarian Design from the Design Academy of Eindhoven and a PhD from the University of New South Wales Art and Design, where he is also a lecturer. So we welcome Guy tonight. And our final speaker will be Carmel Rees. Carmel joins us from the City of Sydney and is a part of the Sustainable Operations team there. Carmel has also worked as the Zero Waste Coordinator and the Zero Waste Education Officer with the City of Sydney. Prior to this, Carmel worked for the Green Building Council of Australia, and we are very grateful to Carmel for joining us with her wealth of expertise regarding issues of sustainability, especially in the context of our very own city. So again, thank you to our three speakers, and first of all, I'll tell you about Slido and then I'll pass you over to Pippa. So Slido is the way in which you can ask questions that we can then pose to our speakers at the end of the keynotes. If you go to that website, www.sli.do, that you can see on your screens, and you plug in that code at the bottom, 56446, then the questions will go straight to Nancy, who will help us with our Q&A at the end. So without further ado, I would like to hand you over to Pippa, our first keynote speaker. Thanks so much, Pippa.
Thank you very much. I will wait to get access to the screen in 1 second. Perfect. So assuming everyone can see the screen, okay, because I can. So thank you. It's obviously fabulous to be here with you all this evening. I'm really looking forward to the outputs over the weekend of the hackathon. So I'm here today to talk a bit about my story, how I got into the world of circularity, and some key elements of the circular design that will hopefully inspire your design approaches this weekend. But I think to start with, this quote really resonates with me, particularly in the journey ahead that we have for circularity. And for me, it really highlights where we need to start in how we view and rethink problems or products entirely. So taking a bit of a step back, I guess my passion for sustainability and design began when I studied product design at university. From there, I worked in the creative industry for a number of years, working at brand and packaging design agencies, and learnt really through my experience how little was being done at the time to address packaging waste in particular, but also a number of the other negative externalities I found to the products that we were designing. So it really led me on a journey to try and find what solutions could be out there to alleviate waste and also to try and create prosperity through the medium of design. And I guess fast forwarding 10 years or so, I'm now working with some of the world's leading brands and packaging design agencies to galvanise this community to shift how we think and how we design. So I'm a member of the Australian Institute of Packaging and a recently certified circular consultant. So we're a growing group of consultants around the world, so our work really focuses to facilitate the design of sustainable and resilient business models and products. So yeah, Kylie mentioned what I do obviously as a business, but my mission really is to help the creative world and the brands that we work with transition to a circular economy. And I do that in a number of ways, really from the experience, I guess. Yeah, sorry, it has moved on from the experience I've had working in the industry. So obviously this transition is a journey and, you know, businesses and individuals at very differing points of that journey. So my offer really tries to capture from, you know, the starting get-go, from education and team training, all the way through to working with organisations on their circular brand and packaging strategies. And this is really why I do it, and I guess the broader global why when we're thinking or talking of, you know, acting local but thinking global. You know, more than ever, we really need to innovate to bring economic activity within our planetary's capabilities and boundaries. You know, we're living in a climate emergency. We're surrounded by the waste and pollution that's a consequence of the systems in which businesses operate. And we're seeing more than ever society struggle through the global pandemic that we're currently in as well. So To paint a picture, it's not a very pretty picture at the moment, but I'm sure some of you may have seen these diagrams before. So they're the donut model from the economist Kate Raworth. So on the left, it really represents where we are today in terms of exceeding our planetary's capabilities and causing excessive negative impacts. All the while we're really falling short in providing the basic of humanitarian needs. And our goal on the right is really to bring human activity within the boundaries of our finite planet and provide good and fair living standards for all. But the good news is we're in a decade of delivery, and the even better news is we do have the solutions, and circular design is going to be a key enabler for achieving that goal. And for me, the journey, as I touched on, I think really starts with how we think and the mindsets that we have, and asking some really challenging what-if questions. And this can really fuel design, which is where we need to be applying circular thinking and action. And for me, what this really clearly shows is where our biggest opportunity sits for impact, and the role of creativity and design in achieving a circular economy. We know that up to 80% of environmental impacts are defined in the very early stages of design, and it's obviously increasingly difficult to go back and undo any negative impacts that are created in those stages. So this is why design is so critical to achieve those broader systemic goals. So looking at the weekend ahead and the challenge that we're looking to address, what could be some approaches or circular design methodologies that we can consider? For me, effective circular design combines systems thinking, human-centered design, and life cycle thinking to create value across the environment, our people, and of course the businesses that work within. So from a systems perspective, it's always really important to consider the broader consequences before we design finite solutions. So what are the negative impacts that may result of a decision that we make? And what design solutions can we apply to mitigate those and create positive outputs? So this is really thinking of the people, the planet, and the product coming together and their interconnectedness in between. Human-centered really thinks about the core human need that we're designing for, and is really the kind of why and the mission and the core function that we're looking to address. And from a life cycle perspective, obviously this is taking into consideration the product or service's entirety. So from design, material resource, all the way through to next of life, ensuring that we're designing in a way that we can really optimize, reuse, repair, remanufacture, and of course the ability to recycle. So these combined approaches really enable us to consider all aspects required to overcome those overshoots that we saw on the donut model, and also make sure that we're not falling short from a social perspective as well. And I think, you know, when we take those principles, the greatest opportunity that we have is to apply them at a business level. So looking at this much broadly and embedding those design principles at the heart of a business or organisation is where we'll see the greatest impact. So each circular business model, which there are 5 key ones listed on your screen, all have the same approach to apply the key circular principles of narrowing the use of resources, slowing down the use, closing the loops, and obviously regenerating. So by that combined approach, it will enable us to achieve the intended social, economic, and environmental requirements of the brief. And obviously, because we're applying those at a business level and we're considering the human, the system, and the life cycle, their functionality will naturally generate the value, not just from an economic perspective, which is what our current linear model does, but also for natural and human sources, which are obviously critical to the success of any business. So if we really understand the true value and impact of waste in our worlds, I'm personally fascinated by waste, not that it's a good thing that we have it, but it is an absolute resource that we've got the ability to eradicate. So how can we design and innovate from that growing problem, but instead look at it from a different perspective in order to create opportunities? So really starting with our mindsets, let's use waste as a resource if it's existing, so we can really optimize that. But then also, how can we multiply local synergies to ensure that we're creating value throughout the system? So I think that's probably my 7 minutes up. So thank you very much again for having me. If you have any questions, I'm obviously around all weekend, but if you want to reach out personally to find out more about Philo & Co with the webinars and workshops that we do, then please drop me a note because I would love to chat. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pippa. That was fantastic. I will now pass over to Guy.
Thanks, Carly. Let me just check that I've got the screen sharing working. Not yet.
Yeah, I think it's still saying I'm on.
Pippa, can you keep your mouse still for a second? Apparently
Sorry.
Nancy needs, no, you're fine. It's just Nancy needs to take over and I think she can't. That looks like it's worked. Thank you, Pippa.
No worries.
Great, thank you, Carly, thank you, Pippa. My name's Guy Curlemans. I'm a lecturer at the Faculty of Art and Design. I wanted to start with this diagram of circular economy. This is a really kind of typical one. This is from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, and it's quite good. It sort of separates out circular economy into the two main spheres, being the biological and the technological, and this is a really important concept. And it also starts to indicate that there's smaller and bigger loops. In this following diagram, which I've created myself, I get into a little bit more detail about those loops. I think one of the really important things to understand about circular economy is that the smaller the loop that you work your product around in, the lower the use of energy and the better conservation of embodied energy that may be in that product or object or system. And for that reason too, recycling is great, but we want to kind of avoid recycling if we can, because recycling is actually one of the biggest loops. And you can imagine why it uses a lot of energy, because it has to break down objects into their constituent materials in order to reprocess them. Within this, there's a lot of potential, I believe, in areas in the smaller loops that hasn't been researched so much. The materials recovery, remanufacturing, recycling are being quite well researched by industry and also in academia, but these smaller areas around repair and maintenance, particularly in reuse, not quite so much. And the other thing that's been circled there is reclamation, right? Which is our understanding of waste repositories. How do we actually extract out so many valuables, materials and objects from very assorted, mixed up waste repositories like landfill or construction waste sites and these kinds of things. And I think these are areas for design focus. In particular, I'm interested in, as an art and design lecturer, I'm interested in the creative potential for new forms of repair and maintenance and reuse and reclamation that really kind of capture the intrinsic human potential for creativity. And I'm going to show you some examples of that and think of these as metaphors. Perhaps one of the really well-known ones now is the Japanese ceramic repair craft of kintsugi, which you can see here, a very beautiful kind of creative form of repair. I use it as inspiration myself in some of my own studio works. Here is a vase that I've repaired with a photoluminescent glue so that it glows in the dark. And just for fun, because I know that the emphasis on this particular hackathon is the urban environment, urban systems, I kind of putting this in here as a kind of fun proposal. What if our maintenance was also a creative practice, right? So that when the daily systems and infrastructures that require constant maintenance in the the city, which is essentially reparative as a system, what if that was also kind of a source of creative potential? Here's another interesting example of a simple object repair using plastic tubing to replicate the weaving of a basket. And here's an example of a simple toy man that's been repaired by the paper artist Ben Jahani, in a really kind of like exciting and fun kind of way. In my own studio works, I try to think of repair both in a metaphorical sense and in a way that extends how we think of repair and what it can do. In this particular work from some time ago, I was looking at repair as a generative system. So this is an object that can be repeatedly smashed and repaired. And in that repeated process, it actually incrementally starts to build up form and structure. This is, the metaphor here is a little bit like bone growth in some respects. And the structure was kind of designed so that the object can break, but the capacity to be repaired, its structural capacity for repair, its repair system would not break. And that was the design of that. I'm also interested in things like this, where you take one object and through the process of repair, you duplicate the object. You turn it into more than one thing. So repair is used here as a concept for proliferation. And I just draw your attention to the CAD drawings that I made for this design before I actually made it in the studio. And this is really important, I think, because we often think of repair as a kind of a manual or traditional craft, but actually repair has a lot of scope for the integration of new digital tools and what they call hybrid crafting, which is the emergence of digital and analog craft processes. I'll return to that in a moment, but I just wanted to show you this object repair here. This is a mocha coffee pot. It's got a broken handle. This is actually a really common break on these kinds of coffee pots. And we passed this object in one of my research projects to Matt Prince, who repaired it with an unusual design, a new kind of handle that actually grips around the middle of the coffee pot. And this is, you know, quite a technical repair in some respects, but it also shows off that kind of ingenuity that a designer who's trained in product design, industrial design, and craft processes can apply to the repair of an object. And lastly, I wanted to talk about this work here. So this is an ongoing research project of mine. It's a derelict building. I mean, this is a kind of an unusual derelict building in the Australian context. It's actually in Japan. It's a 300-year-old Buddhist temple that is collapsing. It needs to be torn down for OH&S reasons. And unfortunately, in the current circumstances, it probably will or would end up in landfill. And I think that would be a real shame, because there's a lot of really valuable materials that are embodied in that building, all sorts of beautiful timbers and also handcraft with the engraving on the wood that you can see on the outside. And also the temple is filled with lots of assorted objects, 300 years of use. It's quite amazing. What I did was I went over to Japan with some cameras and we captured the temple through thousands of photographs. And then coming back to Sydney, we created a photogrammetry model of the temple, which you can see here. So this is a three-dimensional structure, virtual structure, through which we can actually start to really understand the structure of the temple and its objects in a greater capacity than you can from just standing there or taking regular photos. It almost has like an X-ray structure, so you can start to kind of almost quantify the amount of materials and objects that are in this building. And this is important because we need to have more sophisticated understandings of waste repositories like construction waste sites or landfill or other kind of waste repositories. We also took detailed scans of the objects because I think this is also starts to give information to a designer or a craftsperson for new kinds of reuses that could come from those objects. And actually, for my last slide, I'll just give you an example of that with one of my collaborators, Liam McGovern. He's been doing this already by taking waste material from demolished homes. In this case, some beautiful terrace houses that were unfortunately demolished in Stanmore, but he's able to take their timber structures and turn them into furniture. And this is just a very simple example of the way that we can start to extract and reclaim waste objects and materials from waste repositories and transform them into something that's beautiful, and that improves the world. So yeah, I'd like to, urge you to think about these kinds of areas around the smaller circles of circular economy, maintenance, repair and reuse, reclamation. They're probably in some respects, the least glamorous areas of circular economy, but I think there's a lot of scope here for creative innovation. And that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Guy. That was a lot of food for thought, brilliant. And some nice themes tagging with Pippa's talk as well. So thank you so much. Okay, last but not least, I'd like to pass over to Carmel. And then can I remind everyone to start sending questions for Pippa and Guy and Carmel to the Slido website, and that way we can ask your questions at the end. Okay, Carmel, over to you.
Hi, can you hear me now? Sorry, everyone. I started rattling off and thanking Guy and Pippa for all their insights and those types of things. But in any case, I'll reset. I'm really pleased to be coming along to this circular economy hackathon, especially in my own hometown and where most of my professional experience has been based. So really stoked to be along today. Is that sliding across now? Great. Yeah, so as I said, most of my professional experience has been within the sustainability realm, within the context of the built environment. As Carly mentioned before, I'm currently working at the City of Sydney in the sustainability team for city property and projects, where we're looking at the sustainable performance of our own property portfolio and the sustainability impacts and reducing environmental impacts for our capital projects. Prior to working at the City of Sydney, I did work at the Green Building Council of Australia in the Green Star team there, where I was really privileged to get some insights into some landmark developments such as Barangaroo North and South and other sorts of precincts like Central Park, all within the City of Sydney local government area, who have been leaders in the sustainability space, especially in the area of development, showcasing innovations that really can highlight what you can do from the design stage with a bit of thought and a lot of effort behind doing something innovative and leading. So back to the City of Sydney, I do focus on resource recovery, and I'm a resource recovery specialist for our area. So that means I work on things from the strategy of how to lift things out of landfill and divert away from landfill to the actual operations and doings, undertaking audits to see what is actually remaining and going into landfills, and can we find solutions to those. So I guess that's where my experience crosses over with the circular economy principles, probably more focused on that central principle to keep products and materials in use and highlight what their value actually is by examining other opportunities away from the status quo, away from the default to end up in landfill. So as Pippa had brought up earlier, the business models here, again, where I cross over most strongly is, in my experience, is in the resource recovery area. And I'll bring in an example of a project that I'm working on at the moment. But just to take a quick sidestep into sharing platforms, I just wanted to cast everyone's minds back to the event of the sharing economy, and in particular looking at, say, for example, Uber and Airbnb, where these were just concepts, say a little over 10 years ago, and probably went international about 10 years ago, and in that time have become staple additions to their industries, where they have disrupted greatly what the shape of those industries and services actually look like. And the impact of that on the City of Sydney is that, say, the opportunity for affordable and more accessible accommodation meant that in the early years of say, Airbnb being up and running, Airbnb users reported that about 30% of respondents reported that they would not have otherwise thought to come to Sydney for the reason that they may not have been able to afford to. And what this also has done is brought travellers and tourists into areas that they may not have been exposed to simply because of the offering that is much more broad than the traditional hotels in the city centre and that type of thing. So if people know the Airbnb story, you know, this started with an offering of a shared room because in San Francisco, because a conference was on and accommodation was tight, and the people who founded Airbnb said, well, we can make some money and offer the room that we've got here. And, you know, in our sister city of San Francisco, that small example became scalable, systemized, and turned into the international beast that it is now. So just to give an example of what impact some small concepts can make. A project that I'm working on at the moment is essentially diverting food waste from landfill. Food waste has got a really high environmental impact in landfill. For every tonne of food waste that's sent to landfill, about 1.2 tonnes of carbon emissions are a result of that. So at our locations or at our buildings where we've got quite a high amount of food scraps in our waste profile, I've been able to set up systems where we're currently separating those, and they are going to a centralised organics processing facility within Sydney. However, although this is a great outcome, we get high quality compost and renewable energy out of the result, there are still flaws in this system, and there are still ways that we can improve this system. Just to give an example, the facility that we send our food scraps to actually broke down a couple of weeks ago and was out of action for a couple of weeks, which meant that in that time, unfortunately, our food scraps were going to landfill. Thankfully, that was a very brief period, but the project that I would like to work on or that is currently under development is something what Guy was touching on, where I'm looking to actually make the loop for this process as small as possible, whereby we might be able to have our separated food waste actually processed on site with on-site machinery, and the resultant material is something like a soil conditioner that may then be able to, we may be able to apply to parks and gardens within our own local government area that we manage. So I'm looking to see how we might be able to just tighten that loop, where we could eliminate truck movements, eliminate our risk exposure to that one centralised facility that most people who recycle their food waste in Sydney, that's where it goes. And so if we can minimise those risks and potentially take benefit from closing that loop into a tighter circle, we'll still be receiving the environmental benefits of keeping it out of landfill, but there are additional benefits there that we might be able to leverage as well. In a recent workshop, internal workshop, this graphic was developed. The intent of the workshop was to have a look at how the circular economy strategy could be further directed for the City of Sydney. There are some initiatives within the City of Sydney that coincidentally cross over with circular economy principles. However, the intent is to really, as Pippa was saying, really take it back to the drawing board to a higher level and not just rely on the actual activities of recycling or recovery, but systemize things. So I guess that's the challenge for participants today and across the weekend, really, where for myself and for my own personal challenge, I would really love to be able to take the project that I'm working on, establish that as a demonstration project by processing our food waste on site locally, applying that locally as well, but then potentially take the opportunity, depending on how it all goes, to scale that up and actually turn that into a standard practice somehow, whereby it would be great if, you know, if we were talking in 10 years' time, that food ending up in landfill is actually not the standard anymore. That food waste, even if, as much as we can minimise it, whatever that residual waste is, if we could use that material and resource for what it could offer and for further benefits, if that instead became the standard, that would be a really, really great outcome for my project in future. Another opportunity in my space is looking at opportunities to to leverage the materials that end up in strip out, come out of strip out waste projects. A little bit like, you know, Guy was able to salvage some of that timber from a demo project. That's the type of thing where in the industry, the links are not quite there. We need to be able to salvage at exactly the right time. We need to be able to store those materials, and we need to be able to find the appropriate opportunity to apply those. So the steps in this area for construction, demolition and strip out waste, they all exist, but there currently are some real gaps in between them. So that's an opportunity that I'd love to work on next. And if anyone else has the appetite for that sort of challenge, that would be a good one. And another example of an opportunity that I thought I'd bring up is the Where Next campaign, whereby textiles, which are a huge issue with textiles and clothing ending up in landfill. I think most people are already aware that it's potentially completely unnecessary for any textile waste to go to landfill. If a network of other opportunities to repair, to reuse, were to be sort of scaled in Sydney, obviously there are opportunities for that already, but if it was able to be systemised and scaled, that'd be another type of waste stream that would be really, really great to remove from the landfill stream and then feed into another sector or feed into another area of industry. So I just wanted to put some of those opportunities out to the group, and yeah, wish you all the best for the challenges across the weekend. Thank you. Thanks so much for the opportunity, Nancy and team.
Thank you, Carmel. That was some great things for our participants to think about. So we're now going to open up questions for our keynote speakers. So if you have questions, please send them over Slido to Nancy, and I believe Nancy will ask them for us. Also, if any of our keynote speakers have questions for each other, we would love to hear you discuss different topics. And we've also got questions for you as well. But we'll first of all throw to questions from our participants. So over to you, Nancy.
Thank you, Kylie. Yeah, we have one question here that I think will be good for Pippa. It seems like it will be hard to make money of circular businesses, especially competing with companies that aren't focused on sustainability just to make things cheaper. So how do you compete with them?
Yeah, I think the cost conversation comes up a lot, obviously, particularly in the space that I work in, which is predominantly, you know, fast moving consumer goods. I think where we need to look at this is coming back to that human element. You know, what is the real value that we're creating through those designs? Because I do believe the value, the lens is changing from, you know, just focusing on money making versus looking at the value that it's bringing to people as a whole, but also ensuring that it's not having a negative impact on the environment. So unfortunately at the moment, there's no real solution. Like sustainability as it is does tend to come at a cost. But I think it's how you absorb that cost or how you design in that cost. You know, can you create a better value experience for the user that actually puts you in a better position versus competitors? I think it's just coming at it looking from a more holistic approach. And again, having a longer term strategy. I think the world in which we live is very short-sighted at the moment, which is why we have a lot of the problems that we have. But really from a business and, well, predominantly from a business perspective, we need to be planning much further ahead and designing in that resilience longer term. So yeah, unfortunately there's no immediate solution to the cost conversation at the moment, but it's how we build that value elsewhere.
Thank you, Pippa. Definitely. I think, yeah, you're totally right in terms of thinking of long-term opportunities, right? Especially if you're thinking about, for example, like this hackathon, designing something local that could impact actually globally, right? So then it's like that trend, like that new way of thinking that circular economy proposes just to reach that sort of just to close that gap
Yeah,
Thank you,
I
Pippa.
think just from a business perspective as well, if you think all the investment that goes into extracting and collecting that resource to use it for X number of years and then no longer use it, if you can extend that longevity, for me, that creates a much bigger business argument.
Thank you. And I have this other question. I think this one could be for Guy. What would be the first thing you think we should focus on? What is a popular theme at the moment? Thinking what industries are good to try to solve? You are on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I don't know if anyone's seen this recent documentary called Plastic Wars that came out this year. It talks about the problems with recycling, being that post-consumer waste gets so mixed up and so assorted that it's not cost effective to separate and then send to the right place for adequate recycling. So I think this problem of assortment is a huge theme that needs to be addressed and has lots of potential, and for both technological solution and also kind of people-centric solution as well. So I guess that's the thing that kind of keeps me up at night when I'm thinking about circular economy, and I think that's a really important one.
Thank you. Yeah, so we have one wonderful thank you, Guy. You have one for Carmel here. Will Sydney have our own circular economy innovation hub, like the upcoming one in Victoria? Also, are we expecting more public education in circular economy?
As I mentioned, that graphic was born out of a recent workshop, and one of the initiatives that is intended to be developed is obviously we are in a position where we may be able to potentially through grant programs or some of the small business programs take the opportunities for education, but also take the opportunity to actually encourage that level of innovation in a very pointed way, such that it is circular economy principles and solutions that a particular grant area might be focused on. It's not something that is really, it genuinely is still under development, but it's an area that is obviously of a lot of interest, and something that may have potentially through our grant system. But apart from that, those sort of actions that are within our control will allow us to, say through our own operations, that will allow us to establish demonstration projects, which in themselves hopefully may help to influence other businesses' actions or operations for other organisations.
Wonderful, thank you. So yeah, it's good to know that that's happening and that's coming.
You'll be the first to know. But it's it's something that's still being worked through.
Beautiful, thank you. Something that is actually a question from my own self. What advice will you give to the hack teams, to these participants, to make it easy for them to start working on the circularity of products and services? Because sometimes I feel that we start thinking like very broad and like with very big projects. So how these participants are going to be here like 2.5 days working could start with this circularity? It could be for any of you.
Well, if I just start, I would say that I think the best motivation comes from personal experience, right? So we're surrounded by the problems of linear production. Almost everything you look at in a city or in any kind of urban environment has been produced from a linear production system, and it ultimately has some aspect of waste connected with it. And I think if there's something that you care about, if you can identify it, that's a great place to start looking for a solution.
Yeah, I can absolutely echo that, because that's essentially been my journey to where I am today. My eyes were open to the world of waste, and that's become become my bigger purpose that I've really dedicated myself to understand and to follow, which I think also talks back to the human aspect of, you know, circular design. You know, we're really designing for the human needs, and we need to put that problem at the heart of what we're solving, and then obviously consider the broader context from a life cycle perspective, and bringing that as closely into those inner loops as possible, and, you know, working through what those impacts could be on the environment as well.
Yeah, I might just add to that it can be pretty overwhelming to think about the whole picture and every single step, that there may be opportunities to leverage, say, existing systems that really require a bridge to connect complementary offerings, where if a solution is sitting over here on the left and the access to that solution doesn't have a bridge back to the problem, that potentially there are opportunities to create the right sorts of partnerships or connections, and looking at those smaller links as opposed to solving an entire loop of issues.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much. And I think that to complement that, that one that you just mentioned, Carmel, is also related to the Sustainable Development Goals, right? Which participants could use over this hackathon, and like goal 17, right? Like our partnerships are really important, especially to know like we cannot do everything ourselves. So it's really good to go with partnerships. And I have another question here, like really interesting for Carmel. When pushing sustainability initiatives, what are the main barriers for implementation, and how do you see this barrier being broken down?
I think a typical barrier in the resource recovery area that I've been working for a long time now is actually transparency and education of the particular activity that one person might be involved in, and that they have an understanding about their role, but they don't necessarily have an understanding of what system that contributes to. So it's really, there's a lot of education that needs to be done, and a lot of context and education and transparency that needs to be given about where an individual or an individual role may contribute, and what that actually leads to in the next step. I think there is still a lot of waste happening where people are simply unaware of an alternative opportunity. And so there is a very much in the sustainable material space, such a human element to carrying to that next link and making that connection really clear, but with some intent and with some purpose. And then I suppose in contrast to that, a barrier can really be the sort of engagements or contracts that organisations may be tied into, where there are really limited opportunities. But instead, one area that I've been able to work in is actually opening up the requirements of what that partnership really means, so that when you engage with a contractor or a supplier, that all your cards are on the table, and this is the level of recovery that's expected. Or, you know, if you're working with a cleaning organisation, that this is the level of separation that's expected from cleaners to contribute to, and these are the reasons why. So I think sometimes the barriers are education not being met to all users at their level or role, and just that transparency about what the impacts are, because having that knowledge can really assist in getting people over the line to undertake the right behaviours.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much, Carmel. Yeah, definitely. Education is not something that you could only have at university or at school, right? As education involves also sort of like your value chain. So your suppliers, the people you work with, all of that. Right. So that's such a great point. So yeah, so I'll hand it to Carly. You want to close, Kylie?
We'll wrap up the questions there, but a huge thank you to our three keynote speakers for their expertise tonight. We've so appreciated hearing from you. I really appreciated the challenge to look at waste sources, which was a theme from everyone tonight. So don't start from nothing, start from something that exists that we need to deal with, basically. And Pippa, the fact that you reminded us that you don't add a business model to an idea, you need to think about the business model from the start to make sure that it's going to be successful and circular, and also to think about the small loop that Guy reminded us that the smallest loop is the most ideal loop. And I also appreciated that Carmel talked to us about this idea of decentralizing to try and make things more local and achievable, and finding ways to do that. So again, thank you so much. And we've recorded this session, so it'll be for anyone who couldn't make it tonight, they'll be able to view it, to talk about it with their teams. And I guess on Zoom, we can't do a round of applause, but we can do a visual one. So thank you again for joining us, and have a lovely Friday night to our speakers.
Thank you, Carly. Thank you, Nancy.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Carly.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Nancy.
all.
It was great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I will also post all the questions that we had in on Slido on Slack, and I will send it to you by email as well, so you can reply on Slack, or you can reply by email, and I'll post it on Slack so people will get the answers at some point.
Great. Thanks,
Sounds
Nancy.
good. Great.
Beautiful.
Thanks so much.
Thank you very much for joining us tonight.